You guys feel like getting started? Yeah? Cool. Good morning, everybody. Everyone here, everyone on Zoom remotely, around the US, maybe someone in the UK coming in this afternoon, we'll see. And thank you all for coming. My name is Matt. I'm with Paraska Consulting. I'll tell you a couple minutes about us, hopefully for street cred. But here's what our day looks like overall. We'll stay as close to time as we can, but it's always dependent on you guys. As we say all the time, if I and we are lecturing and talking too much, then we probably fail. This is intentionally a nice group in a setting where we can actually see each other. The lights are on, they're not dark. It's meant to be as conversational and even debative, combative, if you will, or curious or passionate or angry or confused or afraid, or all those things hopefully can and will come out. Imagine this is a circle of trust. The columns prohibit us from making it a real circle to actually see, but that's the spirit of this. And so this time is going to be a little bit of flexible, have a little bit of flexibility in it, but we'll make sure we get you guys out of here and give you proper breaks to be able to handle everything personally and professionally, so you're not completely out of pocket for 8 very solid hours here. Here's the morning and here's the afternoon. You'll see that we've constructed this to be starting with theory and foundation and getting everybody a comfort level around what this is, what it isn't, what it is to many different people, and kind of throw the tent wide open about what this important topic is today, and then get into the practice. And we'll be doing that with some use cases and some examples from perhaps consulting work that we've done for our clients, but also from our friends at Adobe. If you can't tell, we're thrilled that they're the exclusive sponsor for this initial CDP launch. And so big thanks to them. I think it's 12 people in 4 cities that we've worked with at Adobe for this. So you'll be hearing from them, and fortunately a little less from me when they do their demo and kind of showcase their tool and how it's used both for brands and for publishers. Again, we'll wrap up. We've got a fireside chat with a special guest at front of the show, Angie Yang, that I know quite a few of you know. She'll be talking about the good, bad, and ugly of her experiences at a top agency and at a top financial brand over the last few years in CDPs. So with that, here's just about 90 seconds of street cred about us, to stay humble and not sales pitchy, but who the heck are these people that put this on if you're not familiar with their organization? We're pretty sure we're the world's largest programmatic consulting practice. We've helped about 375 clients in the last almost 6 years. And we have several thousand combined years of overall experience helping folks symbolically, just like CDPs, with their paid, earned, and owned marketing and media. Proud to be winners of a cool award from our friends at AdExchanger last year, and some sexy logos intentionally crammed together, but hopefully some recognizable ones bottom right. We help people with their tech targets and talent, and we'll talk about that as a common theme around how CDPs are utilized today. And you'll hear from several of our teammates throughout the day, and of course in this discussion, because we've got folks from all around the country and actually all around the world from our team to participate in this and spread the gospel to their own regions and cities and clients as we go. Already mentioned those 3 areas that all of our services fall under, all of our discussions when we do keynotes or panel moderation or anything else fall under, and where certainly CDP's impact. It is the tech, but it's also how that impacts and gives you more advantage with your targets and personalization. But as we always know, the tech and the targets are actually the easiest things to set up. It's we human beings that are usually the toughest to get going and get out of comfort zones and out of our our anchored in feet sometimes in some incidents. So we'll make sure obviously that we focus this on all of you, because that's why we're doing this and launching this training. Here's where we've been privileged to have a lot of teammates and clients around the world. Doesn't show up very well on these big screens, but imagine an orange peel map behind that with actual countries. So our goal for today, again, we want to start pretty high level, get everyone, we've been privileged to do training, as Leo knows, with our friends when he was at the IAB, and looking forward to doing more with MMA and ANA and quite a few others. But every single time we've done this training, we always want to start with getting everybody in a place of comfort and confidence first and something all to stand on together, and then build from there and talk about executing, getting in the weeds and a little bit wonky. Again, this is meant to be as conversational as possible. We actually have a double secret scoring system where we give bonus points to folks. Where is Renee McKenna? I know we're out there. Scott, if you can actually start the tally for us, please. We always start with whoever showed up first. Did we know? I think I remember seeing a couple of folks. Who was the first one here? Come on, you knew you were the only ones. I believe it was you. So 2 points right here, please. We'll do intros in a second. And then we give 2 points to anybody who sits in the front row. So well done, Adobe. Sorry you don't count, but we're going to go right here. You don't count either, but kudos to you. And we'll also have other points. So 10 points go to whoever asks the first question, because we know that's always a big deal breaking the ice. There are very special prizes, maybe a new car, but mostly some cheaper things to say thanks. And again, the other neat part about the afternoon is that this is meant to be an educational foundation, but our goal is that you walk out of here with at least 2 things that you learned that are different that you're going to take back. We're not going to go around the room and have everybody name it, but we're going to check at the end and remind me if I forget, because we're too excited about getting everyone out after a busy day. But if anyone doesn't have 2, raise your hand and we'll solve it and make sure we get you 2. These group breakouts that we have in the afternoon are meant to mix it up, kind of get you out of your seat a little bit, get to know everybody a little bit more beyond the the melon and the pastry out there, and get into your own worlds a little bit. Again, since this is an intentional smaller group versus other stuff that we're going to be launching around this curriculum. One other thing about the timing of this, anybody ever hear of the Gartner Hype Cycle? I know a bunch of you have, right? So Gartner's a fantastic research group that's been around for quite a while. They basically created this thing that a lot of us smile at around ad tech and martech called the hype cycle. And we've noticed that when it came to programmatic advertising, when it came to DMPs, when it came now to CDPs, we see a very similar arc. And we think that right about now, a lot of people feel like they're in the trough of disillusionment. They're tired of hearing 96 companies. There are actually 96 companies as of yesterday that in the United States alone that claim to be CDPs. We think there are really only about 15 of them, and you're going to hear from one of them later on. But understandably, when people just read a lot or hear about a lot of chatter, there's if they're not actually using it, there's a tendency to kind of eye roll, literally or internally. And that's usually when we found over 6 years it's time to start training. Because right when people start to go, oh, what is this? Yes, no, actually it's real, and okay, now let's start and kind of move past the hype and get into reality. So a little bit of landscape. I'm going to toss to Paul Cimino here. Paul is our head of data strategy, based in Austin, Texas, former New Yorker for a couple of decades. He's been with us about 5 years. He actually founded one of the original DMPs in Brillig that was sold to Merkle, an agency that a lot of you might know. Angie Ng, who's joining us later, actually by coincidence is a Merkle alum as well. And we've been privileged to be working with Paul with the rest of our team on probably 3 dozen different client projects for brands and publishers today. And so I'm going to toss to Paul to play lead vocals. I'll play backup vocals, and then we'll go from there. Paul.
Morning, everybody. How's everybody doing? Ready for CDP? Yeah, we chose the university sort of positioning because it's, and Matt said it, on some levels, it's a very simple concept, but once you get into how to join all marketing and identity under one uniform way to look at it, it gets pretty complicated. And that's what we're going to try to do is present the high level, but get into enough details that if you're already doing a lot of this stuff, you'll still find value.
Actually, Paul, before you go in, I already screwed up once. Before you start, and this forces everybody else to talk other than us, if you don't mind, we want to do a whip around and introduce ourselves. Yeah. Sorry, I forgot. So we always like to try to get to know each other a little bit and, again, get the circle of trust going. So what we'd love for you to do, please, is just name, organization, or if you're with Prohaska Consulting, talk about the last job you were at or something like that after saying you're with us. And then one word or phrase about what you think of CDPs today. And again, it's us. So we expect a spectrum of optimism, pessimism, skepticism, whatever. You're allowed to repeat answers. It's meant to be word association. Don't overthink it. But that's it, just to be able to understand who's in the room. Because we do have a nice mix of brands and agencies and some other tech and publishers. And some great trade associations. So with that, in addition to the 2 points, we're going to nominate you to get 3 to be able to speak first if you're willing to accept.
Honored. Jonathan Petrino. I'm head of partnerships at a company called Dialogue Tech that manages all inbound phone and voice communications. We get a lot of interest from clients to get our data into their CDP. I also have worked in the identity space for a while and do a lot of advisory work in the identity space.
That's a one-word or phrase.
Valuable but overhyped.
Very good, fair. We're going to save Adobe for last over here.
John Delvito at NASDAQ. I have programmatic and one more that I think of CDP, I guess integration. Integrating your still a little bit of foundation for me, but integrating data to create a better overall experience and testing that data.
Nice. You just named the 3rd stage of a publisher using CDP. Very good. It's 4 bonus points for him. Very good, sir. Hey.
Cam, consulted with Emerald Labs. As far as CDP, I guess real-time availability.
Nice.
As a Jermaine, I'm Deputy GC at GOEA. And one word that I would use to describe CDP system complex.
Indeed.
Hi, I'm DJ. I work with Citibank. There is one word for the CDP is old thing new name.
Nice. Yeah, we're going to get into a little history lesson. We'll look to you to see if you agree with kind of where this comes from. For some companies, it's definitely just a new coat of paint, but for others, it's a different thing. So we'll hopefully show the difference on that.
Hi, I'm Aileen Kirby, in integrated strategy at Lux Collective, small full-service media agency. And again, I think it's valuable, but
Cool. Hey, Steve.
Hey, Matt. Steve Grubbs. Worked with Prohaska Consulting, and before that, too many years at Omnicom.
Steve, I had the privilege of letting Steve let me start the digital media department for him at BDO in 1994 as a TV buyer. But he ran the best department in the world for many decades. Great to see you here. Hey, Glenn.
Glenn Spada from Prohaska Consulting. Prior to Prohaska, I was at the MTA, and before that I was at Condé Nast Meredith. One word for the CDP landscape is probably 2 words. It's harnessing your power.
Cool. Hey, Leah.
I met Stone and the Local Marketing Association and the phase of called that for 2 years. Did the IB before that, consulting, spent a lot of time in advertising. CDP, I kind of go along with
You allowed to call you the co-founder of the IAB? Sure. I thought you were there with us in '96.
I was AOL in '96.
That's fair.
I was trying to get
Thanks. We'll talk about chats with Bob Pittman probably back in the day another time. Very good. Hi.
Hi, Erica Del Lorenzo, Vice President of Membership and Business Operations at the MMA, also formerly from the IAB with the CDP. Let's see. Hi, Rachel Bergman, consultant now, but I spent 5 years of experience and have a lot of experience with ESPs or email service providers and data platforms. So I guess from the CDP, oh my God, acronym right. Just like, I think what you said exactly, like, is this just what we've already had?
You're gonna like when he walks out on future PRP. Cool. Spencer, hey.
Hi, I'm Spencer Nightingale. I just started interning with Prohaska this month, so I'm very new to the whole world of programmatic. So I'd say CDP for me is a great opportunity to learn.
For your major is?
Yeah, I'm double majoring in business analytics.
Yeah, so that might be relevant. Nice. The future of our industry right here. Hey, Steve.
Scott Friesman, like for Prohaska Consulting, for that with theology space. I'd say so 2 words: complexity and potential.
Yep. On phone. Hey.
Hi, I'm Jillian. I'm here
Very good. You weren't the one that shut down the cookies in 2 years, right? It didn't directly come to you. We can't all come at you during the break. I understand it's a large organization. That's great. Great to have you here. Hey, Ward.
Hey, Ward Blunt, Vice President of ASCA. Prior to that, did we SSP, so the Index Exchange in Texas. My word, from my perspective on CDP would be blue.
A lot of that. Let's go over to the other Prohaska table over here. Mr. Shaw, who you'll be hearing more from later.
Morning, folks. Amit Shah, CDP Tech Strategy and Publisher Operations. Working on our technology strategy. One more subscribe, CDP, essential.
Dan? If you want to learn everything about blockchain, you'll see the sticker is on the back of her laptop, MetaX, that she's still helping them out a little bit. Let's jump back to the front of the room and mix it up. You're hearing from too many Prohaska people. Hey, Annie.
Hi.
So the exercise is name, company, and one word or phrase. What do you think of CDP today?
I am Annie Cohen-Anderson from Horizon Media. And this is just more for my own pure interest of learning CDP. We have our own, of course, and then we also have clients using it. So it's complexity.
Yeah, for sure. Lay it down, please. Hi. Hey.
Good morning, everyone. Mike Ragusa, solution consultant at Adobe. I'll be speaking this afternoon from both the advertiser and publisher perspective. I've been with Adobe and we're just launched our own CDP for about 3 years now. Prior to that, I was with Microsoft for about 5 years, from the time in which they acquired Atlas to the time in which they spun it off Facebook. After that, I was with Flipside to the publisher side. I was at Yahoo for a few years and a smaller global DSP called Mission One.
So I hope your word or phrase about CDPs would be something optimistic.
Complimentary.
All right, very good. Nice. And the rest of our Adobe team?
Hi everyone, I'm Chaudhary, product marketer at Adobe. And before I joined Adobe, I had agency experience doing performance marketing. One word to describe CDPs, I'd say Adobe.
Someone should hire you for marketing. Yeah. Let's do a fast whip around with the final five back here.
Antonio, Client Strategist, here from ASCA, for director, programmatic there. Auto as well. One word to describe CDP would be comprehensive.
No.
Calvin Norman, consultant for ASCA. Basically, before that, background on the publisher side of things, the Associated Press, Answers.com. Work with the CDP. What's next?
Cool. Hey, Dave.
David Sauter, client strategy from ASCA based out of Detroit.
Talking to a couple automotives on Tuesday about CDPs, right? Interesting times for them. Cool. Hey, Mr. Beck.
Matthew Beck, client strategy for ASCA based today.
Nice. Hey, Mr. Beck.
Hi, Scott Bender, partner and global head of client strategy for ASCA. Previous to ASCA, great deal of time at Turner, Fox, publisher side. My one word would be
Good deal. Nice. All right. So we're right on time. Now let me just finish the rest of the wrap up and say one other thing about Paul. Paul and I have been talking, just him and I, about doing this for about 3.5, 4 years. Yeah. So a long time coming. I think we kind of needed to get to the trough. We needed to get to, frankly, a lot of folks realizing, oh, wait, we can actually use this, and that's a thing. But again, he's going to bring more than 3 decades of experience into this landscape and history lesson and foundation building. Yeah, Paul, thank you.
Good morning again. So just short biography, because it's sort of like, it's almost representative of what the CDP is becoming or coming to fruition. So I started out as a buyer at Saks Fifth Avenue. So I'm a merchant, and I grew up in an era where supply chain automation was happening and electronic data interchange between companies, and companies trying to agree on matching data and dictionaries and communication so that they can decrease cost and friction. And I wasn't very good at buying fashion, so they put me in charge of, because I didn't have a lot of fashion taste, but now.
Clearly.
So I got put in charge of commodity, sort of basic stuff that was more about modeling and data than it was about fashion. So ERP, and then early on, I got to go work for Bell Labs on interactive television and sort of before the web, before the first web browser. It came out like while we were at Bell Labs. Then I spent about a decade in e-commerce. I started a web shop building e-commerce websites. So hooking to logistics and banks and transaction clearing and all that stuff. Then I went into advertising on the publisher side and was CTO of a company called Quality Health, which was a combination publisher with an advertising business, but also lead generation, mostly for the drug companies. So privacy, HIPAA, compliance, getting notifications from consumers that were pissed off, that was, a lot of that business, and still is. And then I started Brillig in 2008, 2009, when it really started to go. And it was a very early DMP, and it was a contemporary of Demdex. I forget, Demdex was called something else in the beginning too.
Yeah.
I forget what it was. And Brillig was novel in that my approach, because I had come from sort of the CRM direct marketing world, I tried to bring the data from, Experian was a very early partner of ours, Equifax and whatnot. So we tried to join sort of the CRM data world with the digital data world, and we created sort of a cookie mall. And we also used multiple types of identity in a very crude programmatic fashion. So I'm been around up and down the balance sheet across the technology spectrum. So that was where this came from. There's so many different things coming together in the CDP that that's why we went with the sort of the university brand. And as simple as we could make it is, we're going to talk a lot about advertising and marketing coming together, the data, the segments, the measurement and attribution, the optimization of these two completely, still largely unjoined worlds. Marketing being the carrying and feeding of your known customers and worlds and prospects and people that you're emailing and mailing and trying to retarget and all that stuff. And then advertising, which is sort of your future customers. Who said data integration was the biggest problem? Yeah, so yeah, it's been the bane of existence for database engineers, computer scientists, since the beginning of computing. And the thing that we don't talk about, and we'll get into it in the future discussion, is how commerce plays a role in that. Because I came from that ERP world and supply chain, and if you're interacting with CTOs, CMOs, and CEOs of large brands, they do care about ad tech and their marketing stuff, but they really concentrate on their bigger costs, which is inventory, manufacturing, logistics, human resources, which is all under enterprise software under the ERP umbrella. So commerce is, sort of as products become smarter, wearables, Internet of Things, and we'll talk a little more about that. Commerce is going to join the party. And the way that Prohaska sees, maybe uniquely, the CDP is the junction of these three worlds, not just the two worlds. And the industry has obvious challenges, the basic database integration challenges, but also the triopoly, which we're going to talk about as an opportunity because those three companies have gotten it right, and they were built as data-first companies from the beginning. They never forget anything about us, and do the best job in our industry of personalizing and caring for consumers and prospects. The browser gods we'll talk a little bit more about. There's just, those companies are almost tectonic in nature, and what goes on in the browser and the operating system is going to affect everybody. And then the regulatory stuff, CCPA, and all the other laws that are going to go on.
You'll notice this is Exhibit A where we don't change slides based on who shows up.
Yeah.
So again, we've spoken many times and run town halls with people like Chip Hall, great people, that name, and others, in talking about the challenges of very large companies that have constituencies within the leading browser in the world, wanting to protect its users, and then an advertising business that's kind of big, and sometimes those issues and goals aren't always immediately aligned, and so threading that needle is very challenging. So we'll talk about, again, ways that everybody can be on offense with these changes instead of not just defense, like at least 75 companies have been approaching us over the last 48 hours since that announcement came out. Okay.
And we saw it before starting to talk about the cookie death issue. My experience at Saks with the way that they care about their customers, and I would say specialty retailers in general care about their customers. They know that 80% of their margin dollars, their gross margin dollars, come from like 10%, 20% of their customers. So it's really finding that gold and repeat business and personalization and tailoring and personal shopping. And my whole goal is that I thought the internet, naively, back in 1995, was going to be the vehicle that everybody could get this kind of service. But immediately, once the internet really exploded from a media standpoint, and you could no longer do media buys sort of the old way, and it became programmatic, there was the introduction of so many players that it became very hard to personalize. But it's still, I came up with this moniker of tailor, don't target, which is just from my Saks merchant days. And we're still struggling, with that line of where is personalization and where is sort of customization and sort of procurement, almost merchandising for the consumer, what they should be seeing, and what's creepy. So, because I've worked in the ad blocking and anti-ad blocking world, we advise like PageFair, block through these companies, and we've tried paywalls, and we've tried to threaten the consumer that the internet is not going to be free, and it's just not going to work. And we've gotten to a point where the government, with its heavy hand and sort of almost they're going to pound a nail in with a sledgehammer if we don't get our stuff together. So and Google, Apple, and anybody that has a browser is saying, I've got to get do two things. One is sort of get rid of potential bad actors that are coming in third and fourth and fifth party in the ad chain, which we'll talk about. And at the same time, that helps my company because I become more secure. My customers become more secure. My clients, consumers. So, not to toot my own horn, but
yeah, I'll do it for you.
Okay.
So consultants, fortunately, big or small, are privileged to be independent, agnostic, and kind of see things coming a little bit before others might, because we get to work with every group in the ecosystem. And so here's Paul, living proof of that, looking very young and hip there. And the is that a it's like a famous it's not a Jobs T-shirt like brand there, but it's a black, very in tech, very savant move there, very nice. His younger days in 2013, talking, he said 5 years left, and he was about 6 months off. Pretty good. Repeated it with us 6 years later, and yeah, it was pretty good on that. So anyway, hopefully, again, this isn't tooting horns, but seeing pattern recognition. There are some similarities to what CDPs can do for you as a publisher or a brand or an agency that we kind of see a little bit on our own with patterns around businesses and with consumers as well. Anyway.
Yeah, and we were, one of the biggest cookie miners out there. Brillig was founded 2008, 2009, but we used a distributed data technology more widely known as Hadoop. Anybody know what that means? Hadoop?
It's 3 points if you know Hadoop. Yeah, of course he's gonna know. Yeah, nice.
It's and we'll get into it a little more, but it's something that you should know about because it's a huge change to data technology and just the amount of data that companies can store and access in real time. The old way of storing data was in a SQL, in a stored environment. So what that does is it limits the amount of data you can keep in memory and access to do things in real time, to get insights, do reports, see what happened an hour ago, retarget consumers that were in one channel and now we're in another channel or stream. And we picked it, and it was way too early because the technology was not mature in 2010. Now it is solid state. It's more widely known as Spark, and you know, Amazon is all over it now. Google and Microsoft, and it's so underneath all this are complete changes, almost as big as I'm old enough to where I was in the flat file database world of the 80s, and then to the SQL world of the 90s. It's pretty much that big, which was transformative. That's what allowed the ERP and some of these other things to happen. So at Brilliant, we saw the beginnings of mobile and the early deterioration of cookies. As people spent more time on their phones and using apps, we just started to not see as many people. So we started to use other monikers, pseudonyms, like IP address, the user agent. Now this is very, very common now with people trying to identify us through some kind of fingerprinting technology. Are you familiar with the probabilistic identity methods, which are more common today than I think deterministic, and we're going to talk a lot about the emergence of deterministic.
We'll save that for 5 stages.
But somewhere in this article at the beginning, I just say, you know, and I'm not a programmer, never been a programmer, mostly run technology teams. But what we saw was that the cookie was basically a hack. And we knew that because in my old company that built websites, our costs for maintaining consumer sessions and losing customers that had put something in their shopping cart in a website, in the early browsers, the browser would just forget who they were. There was no cookie. So the powers that be came up with the concept of a first-party cookie. Then they said, "Ooh, what if, you know, UPS wants to remember who this person is, the third-party cookie?" And then we drove a Mack truck through that. And that's what led to all of this daisy chaining of cookies and identity. But it's just not, it's not solid state. And that's what we're trying to do, is come up with a uniform way of identifying consumers. One, if they've given us consent to do it, and two, if they haven't and they are a potential future customer that we can delight. That's where the rub is. We're going to spend a lot of time talking about that.
So we know that each of the constituencies faces challenges. This is an example of an ad that I get all the time from Verizon, where I've been a subscriber and our family's been a subscriber for 12 years, and I'm still getting promotional ads from them. Hey, switch to Verizon. And yeah, you're all shaking your head like I am every time I see this. It's actually negative brand impact, because I can understand why Verizon needs to do promotional offers and give someone else a better deal than I, and you eventually get them back and make it up, and you know, it's the slow burn. But why do I even need to see that? That's just basic blocking and tackling that by the end of this year should be embarrassing if anyone's ever doing that. It's just laziness at this point, I think. And again, not helping. Sell me something else. We've used the socks example all the time when talking to my mom or anyone outside of our industry. Hey, you know when you're shopping for socks and then you see the same socks? Yeah. Like, yeah, well, yeah, and sometimes I've even already bought the socks. Right, that's called lazy and stupid, and no offense to them, but a lot of rookies are still getting used to the tech and how to use it. So, you know, marketers have those challenges because they're siloed, not just ad and promotional spend, marketing umbrella, but also the data that follows. They have broader challenges when they're not buying D2C companies to absorb that culture and that customer base. And infrastructure, they have threats, traditional brands versus D2C, which eventually will just become brands because everybody will be D2C to a certain extent. The balance of identity and privacy we've already highlighted a little bit, and we'll get deeper into a little bit later. We've covered a lot of these others, but you know, for both the marketer and the publisher, one of the big themes here that you'll see throughout is that we know that there are 3 companies outside of mainland China in the B2C space, and 1 company in the B2B space that are crushing it today. It's Google, Facebook, Amazon at 68% of US digital spend, going up, not going down, and LinkedIn in B2B. And why? They've done two things really, really well that thousands of other publishers haven't. They have the best deterministic footprints in the world, and they have done the best job proving attribution and measurement, cause and effect, either being the best sales team or buying third-party attribution and measurement companies that used to be independent and were in-house suddenly, or frankly, just having the best walled garden and showing again that clearly all that was because of us, not because of anything else that's done. And no one else has that to that level. And so everyone else is fighting with 9 fingers tied behind their back for ad spend. So marketers, understandably, when they see math and proof that this worked, it's easy for an agency to tell the brand, yeah, this worked, see how great we did. It's easy for the CMO to say to the CFO and the C-suite, hey, look, our agency and we in-house did a great job, it worked. When maybe there are different ways to keep score. And if everyone had deterministic footprints and unique IDs, it might be a little bit different and in an open web. And so those are big macro, big swinging stuff that we know might be slightly off script, but we promise the CDP is directly related to helping solve these problems. And the customer suppression is the thing about Verizon that we talked about. Turning to the marketer partner, the agencies certainly have some challenges. We don't need to, we're not going to be up here bashing agencies because we have agencies as clients, and a lot of us came from agencies, and we love agencies. We just think they're going through a necessary and important transition. A lot of folks like Verizon have figured this out a long time ago by remaining independent, that there were certain things in, let's call it a post-Axis 1.0 world around transparency in the way folks are engaging, whereas Axis built their first and then second DMP and did a brilliant job arbitraging inventory and audiences and creating an audience pool they could take advantage of, partially for them, partially for their clients. The transition from managed to self-service has resulted in Rocket Fuel and others being thrown on the scrap heap, and Trade Desk doing pretty darn well because the trend towards giving people software so that, we joke all the time, the DSP, when I was buying television, was a hold letter that we would get in the mail from NBC saying you've reserved your inventory, thank you. Or the planning tool ultimately became Excel, but it was a legal pad from my first boss. That was the DSP and a telephone. So, why don't we just give those agencies the same tools to do their job better? So, another reason why the nature of self-service has come into play, and being able to take CDPs and push that out and allow publishers and brands / agencies to leverage that is part of the overall trend we see in the future. We'll get to in the back half as well. And then the other challenge, when I was at BBDO, I was on the 4th floor in the media department. 5th floor was account, 6th floor was creative. That was siloed for us because I'd have to walk upstairs and I was the much skinnier 23-year-old telling award-winning creative people, yeah, you should make this 460 by 60 banner, it's going to be great. They're like, who the hell are you? And get out of here. We're never going to do that. We're making Super Bowl ads. You idiot. That was at least one team, though. 20 years later, we've had siloed media wins, business, creative wins, business, different agencies that Wall Street says you're supposed to hate each other, and the brand says you're supposed to play in the sandbox. That's tough. And so no wonder there hasn't been a data thread and programmatic creative or data-driven storytelling hasn't really flourished like it's starting to finally now. So the CDP, no surprise, one of the solutions to help with that as well. Okay. And then turning to our publisher friends. This was CNN's homepage to me today. This morning I pulled it at 5. They didn't ask me who I was. There was no automatic login. There was nothing. I mean, yeah, they're CNN, so they could tell I'm an American, so I may care about a couple of things that are obvious on there, but that B of A message should have been different for sure, because our company is a B of A customer, but I'm not personally, and I probably should have gotten something else, but not horrible, but publishers, again, 9 fingers tied behind their back. Having a separate ad sales team that drives still too much through insertion orders and not merging that with programmatic sales teams means you've got siloed relationships. I was the guy at the New York Times. I had the privilege 7 years ago of starting the programmatic practice at the New York Times, and I was the first to get a DSP with us because I was racing to our marketing department and saying we should use the same software. You should use that to acquire subscribers and audience, and we should use it to sell ads and do audience extension. And we should have that same data pool because our readers read us and see us as one company. Why do we see them as 12 different people at 11 different stages of our life cycle? As either a loyal customer or, oh, hey, they showed up again. Who are they? And then we serve them completely untargeted and not personalized content marketing. So the opportunity for a CD for publishers is huge, even though it's not as talked about today, understandably. The reason why, just take a step back, the reason why we intentionally do this class and bring everyone together, we learned this by doing this with the IAB for 6 years, because we used to have it separate where we would talk to sellers and how to sell programmatically, how to buy programmatically. But A, you can learn a lot from each other, and B, we saw this pattern 10 years ago with DMPs, where every company except this company called Crux targeted the brands and agencies to get their first party, second and third party together going. Crux was the only one who said, oh, hey, maybe publishers could use this too. And then several years later, everyone flipped, Crux sold to Salesforce, and everybody's off to the races. So we see the same pattern here. And you'll see this when you do your CDP reviews with everyone. You'll see this, quite frankly, with how recently and how fresh out of the oven the Adobe Publisher solutions are. And you'll see examples of that this afternoon. But it's understandable. Everyone thinks of the marketer first because it's been 25, 30 years of trying to understand the customer from that front. But if you are a publisher and you think of your audience and your customers the same way and think about lifetime value, you'll see, hopefully, and agree by the time we get done with the 5 stages of how to use a CDP for brands and for publishers. It's pretty similar. And so a lot of the same challenges. Plus, of course, publishers are brands trying to get folks to drive audience and or subscriptions, right? Okay.
Yeah, so what, yeah, it's funny, all these things that are coming together, the data integration, creative optimization. A while back, it came to me that I used to call it geeks, freaks, and suits. Now, because you have to have, the geeks are the programmers, which are, technical people. The people with different colored hair, the freaks, you have the creative people. And those two crowds interacting is there's a lot of like not common ground. And then the suits, the salespeople, trying to get it out there. So it's as much a human, the siloing is as much a human organizational issue as it is a technical issue. And I think we see that perhaps across the board, and the two things simultaneously, you have to separate them organizationally. We're proponents of someone had a title of integrated marketing, which that's what we look for. Like if, because that's the beginning, leading up to something that's starting to be called the chief data officer, which we think is going to emerge as something that's equal to the CMO and the CTO. So,
yeah, the main theme is that, again, these challenges all have some things in common. It's been too manual, it's been too disconnected. Can't get my hands around it, build real use cases, and it seems like we're throwing a lot of money down a hole for this SaaS, and what are we getting out of that again? If we did that deal, and oh, the one person who convinced us we needed DMP/CDP left to go to another place, and now we're left with just 50 grand a month, or what happened here? And so again, trough of disillusionment.
Right. And the simplest use case or business case for CDPs that we find and we recommend and we work on folks with, whether they're from the publisher side or the brand side or the tech in the middle, is suppression. Matt just pointed out 2 or 3 examples, and I think, anybody from Netflix here? Netflix, and you said it's there's a lot of reasons. I mean, I've been a member of Netflix since the beginning. The mail order business into the streaming business, but they would constantly hit me with the, do you want to join? And I was curious, like, how can they, and I think, are you a Pandora member?
Yeah.
They just hit you with an ad, probably programmatically, that was,
well, they keep telling me ads suck. Why don't you just pay us? Just don't ads suck.
Right.
So Pandora's been our client, and we say, kind of, you're not helping, but maybe change the tone. We get it, but anyway.
So
Yeah,
if you can get a 25% yield gain on your spend by even suppressing half of the ads that you, if it's a membership or a subscription service, that should be the first thing that you go after with a CDP. And when I say that, you can do this in the digital side and programmatic, and you can do it on the CRM side, but doing it holistically is what the CDP is all about. So this is as simple a diagram as we can come up with. And I know that the Venn diagram with the magic thing in the middle is a common theme, but it's right now, CRM and ad tech are joined through very thin, very fragile windows, mostly LiveRamp or the triopoly, right? So if you look at, I want to see who's a customer in digital using, pseudonyms, cookies, and other, handles. And I want to be able to treat them differently if they call my call center. Who was from the call center business? So that sounds simple, extremely difficult to do. I mean, as a consumer, you want the call center to know that you've had some bad experience in another channel, but it doesn't always happen. We're okay with the concept or the name consumer data platform, but it's a little bit wider than that. We think of it as, marketing is going enterprise. Marketing and advertising and caring and feeding for customers and prospects and finding new customers as moving from a sort of fragmented and vendor-driven or externally driven process to something that's much closer to the enterprise. Not to say that big software companies won't drive those enterprise softwares, because this is Adobe, Google, and all big software companies are going to be doing this.
One quick housekeeping thing while we transition here that I forgot to mention. We'll be emailing all of you guys the deck tomorrow, so you'll have that. So hopefully you're going to see some sexy slides that you're going to want to take your phone out. Feel free, certainly for yourself, and to tweet out this is awesome or this is insane or either. But we'll be sending that out to you. And we're taking the stakes up because we haven't heard a question yet from anyone. So it's 12 points to whoever now asks the first question. More valuable. Okay.
So let's get into sort of the building blocks and more detail about CDPs. Our definition, which I just went into a little bit, and some of the business cases, is a unified, centralized platform that stores and organizes, provides users with easy access to a wide array of customer data, sort of generic. So there's a couple things in there. If you think about the three basic blocks, it's identity at the bottom, so uniform identity. Segmentation, who are my best customers? Can I score? Can I segment? Can I look-alike model my best customers into a pool of data that doesn't know as much about those people? And measurement and attribution. So those three things, measurement or attribution of spend and how it's doing, segmentation, and identity, working together across all screens and all channels. That's the CDP. That's enterprise marketing. That's where we think this is all headed.
So how many of you remember taking the SATs? For Spencer, it was 2 years ago. Yeah. Cool. So remember the analogies that you'd have to do, multiple choice, right? So we've used this as sort of the, when people go, yeah, just tell me what the hell it is. The reality is that if you think about the DMP and have a foundation there, we've spent more than a dozen years getting paid media down. Okay, not bad. Some folks still need to use suppression files and do better on retargeting. But, we've had the DMP there, but the CDP is to DMP as marketing as to advertising. As folks know, advertising is a subset of marketing. CMO, she has several things, paid, earn, and own, under her domain, and read that most of the time. So that's an easy way to think about why is this different and not just a different coat of paint of the same thing. This is where one of the ways easily we look at features and benefits and use cases and say, all right, is it really different? Or was this, all due respect to one of our non-sponsors, this is Salesforce just jamming things together and calling it a CDP because the pressure was on them to do so, even though their product roadmap hasn't integrated most of it yet. that's one example. And then there are other companies that are suddenly realizing, oh my God, we have 2 of the 11 features of a CDP. We should call ourselves that. So it's understandable race to get into a box and get valued, all that other stuff. But obviously a lot of education and worth a lot of debate. I think 12 points ago now.
I was curious, especially looking at something this simple, like when you said that the chief data officer is a new title, like you should say, isn't that really the CMO then? The chief data officer and not a separate person who's the CDO?
I think it's going to tend to be a new type of CMO. I don't know what it's going to be called, but it's someone
But
who.
like, but should it be somebody, it seems like you're like creating another silo
Well,
by creating.
We're going to show you a slide in the afternoon. We worked with a large global bank 3 years ago and recommended to them you needed to create a CDO role culturally and organizationally, because it isn't just marketing data that's in here. Even though we've just said CDP equals marketing, because for that bank or that retailer, you have your other financial data, you have other tools and other departments that should be coming down to what this used to be called, and still sometimes is the data lake. The concept of every department siloed in drinking from the nice fresh water. So that data person should actually be almost parallel with the CMO, but then leveraging that with other sales data and the other departments at that kind of level.
A good model to look at is,
What was that? Just, we got some folks on Zoom and we'll repeat it for you though.
a good example is Giovanni's chief marketing officer changed the role to chief growth officer, and includes all the things you just described.
Yeah, and we think the marketing to growth move that Giovanni and a couple other dozen brands in the last year have started to do is symbolic of understanding that this isn't just pissing money down a hole and then let's see if it came out the other end. This is actually understanding the entire process and helping grow the whole org. And yeah, in some places CDO folds under CMO, CGO, and in other places, you know, it depends on the culture and org and frankly the use cases of what you're going to use the tech targets and talent to be. So you're both right. Yeah.
Another comment? Oh, and your insight of that question and debate is another question. Does the CDO report to the CMO, or is it a separate person? And that's why we don't know. And these acronyms are catch basins for concepts that are not defined. So it's okay. I think everybody just has to relax that we don't know what a CDP is yet. And we just think that marketing finally is on the march towards enterprise. Complete accountability, companies that don't forget anything about us as consumers or prospects, and delighting, the internet finally delighting us, even ads that delight us across the board. Because the biggest thing you'll see in the market for CDPs and companies that are calling themselves, and we'll get into this a little more, is there are CRM entities, mostly BI companies that are coming out of the email space, business intelligence system, people that understand large data blocks and machine learning and can clone success, are projecting themselves into the digital space in a greater way other than just retargeting through LiveRamp or LiveRamp Video or whatever their chain is. And then the digital companies are reaching to the known world, and they're doing it through privacy and other things to become more multi-channel, whereas before they were focused on just digital.
Yeah, so if you need a visual to take home with you or to share with the class where you understand the concept of what marketing is and PEO, or you need it for yourself, here it is. So, here's a pretty big global brand and some examples of their different touch points and how an organization like Pepsi, whether they're in upstate New York or in Chicago or in Beijing, needs to have all these things talking to each other. I mean, again, the can itself of the bottle is owned media. We don't even joke anymore when we say our umbrellas that we give out, and will be one of the prizes, not a car, sorry. When we pack an auditorium, like Mark Benioff does at Salesforce, then we'll maybe give away a car. But I mean, our umbrellas are paid media. We love when it rains because it's free branding for us. We get to pull those out. So every single branding your hotspot as an organization, every single moment is something that you own is huge. And again, so these are three equal. It depends on the organization in terms of where the money and time and the effort goes. But all those equally should be knowing the customer. I mean, this is the company that has billions of dollars, not me. So why do I know my relationship to Pepsi? They don't know it to me. Okay.
So another way to look at the three worlds coming together is the CDP as the point of leverage for the different types of ways that we communicate with customers. And the newest entrant is mass media, that the realization that through these technologies, Hadoop, Spark, all these things, that mass media is now addressable. And I'm talking whether it's outdoor media, linear television, everything is addressable using at least geo. The geo database, or in the geodata industry, there's, I don't know how many geodata sources there are now.
40.
The accuracy of GPS, the ability to get it in the bid stream, it makes everything addressable. And this is perhaps the hardest part, the sort of high wire act is identifying, segmenting, and attributing media that you've never had to do that before, like outdoor media. And you know, we work, you know, there's very innovative companies like Captivate, the elevator media company, and that are doing this. They're building like miniature CDPs to join just their world with the rest of digital advertising. And this is a good point of debate, and I'd like to invite it, is what's the difference between a DMP and a CDP? And these are just to get us going, some of the basics. That the channel focus is digital for the DMP. The DMP is mostly cookie-based. You can build segments. You can project those segments either in a batch as a buy or in real time in some cases, programmatically. Whereas the CDP is omni-channel. It's trying to be aware of at least more than one channel, but beyond retargeting. And I know we joke about, I mean, retargeting, just think about how much you said with your example of your mom or buying socks and getting bludgeoned with that ad for 2 weeks. It's still almost a miracle of technology that can happen, that the ad can chase you around no matter where you are. And you know, one way of simplifying your strategy or a tactic is to take that tactic of retargeting and expand it, right? Can you use programmatic creative? Can you alter the media mix with that customer? The second area of difference is identity management. DMPs are, and this was on purpose, we're told in our self-regulatory era before these laws were passed that the two data sets must live separately. You cannot in the same computing environment have known data, PII data, my email address or a hash of my email address, and a cookie associated with me so that you can follow me around, because that creeps people out. So that's where LiveRamp and TapAd and all of the identity management companies came from. They serve as almost a clean room where you can join the data and then you get it back as almost a different language, but you're still able to recognize that that was the same person. The data sets, and this is probably debatable, that the DMP is mostly third and second party, the cookie sets that you're getting access to, and you are joining that to first party, whereas the CDP is inherently at its foundation first party. It's more about what is making your company successful, and then you're joining it with other data. And there is machine learning in the DMP, yes? I know. Yes. So
5 points for admitting something not known. Good.
So it comes from the old client server world, probably before you were born. But the first party is the user. The second party is the server. First party, second party. And a third party was someone who was interacting behind the scenes. We sort of bastardized it a little bit on the internet with data, because first party is data from me, the hash of my email. Second party is, I have a special relationship, you know, I'm Google or it's better to use, I'm Macy's and I have a special relationship with CNN. So I'm gonna join my data with theirs in a direct manner than rather through a third party. So that's second party. And to make it more confusing, they've just come up with the industry zero-party data. I don't know if you've heard this term, which is, you know, like going on and ranting on, you know, a blog or a rating system, you know, giving your own data to a publisher or to a retailer. Does that help?
Yeah,
Okay.
even as somebody else's first-party data, like a private
Yeah.
marketplace.
Yeah.
Right.
So easy example, Trivago, travel site partners with a dating site. They've done this for 8 years in Germany, where every single time the dating site profile changes to engaged, Trivago wants to know that because there's a really good chance there's going to be a travel moment happening X months in the future. And so we sold, we had a data client out of San Diego that had proprietary real estate data that was first party with listings that we took and sold to others in a second party. So for example, Home Depot at our client Omnicom said, geez, you're gonna buy a home, we know most of the time that's the next thing they're gonna do when they get in, holy crap, we gotta redo the kitchen. So that's valid. Yep.
But the confusion is valid because it's either first party or it's not. Right, so it's that to me is the bigger part.
Third party is the generic stereotype auto intender. And part of the pendulum swing of why DMP, open data exchange with third party, understandably got watered down and devalued, and a lot of agencies, smart folks like Horizon said meh to a lot of that, is because, you know, they said, you know, the definition of what an auto intender is wasn't consistent. We wrote an article in Ad Exchanger 4 years ago from that guy Amin Shah with this guy Paul Semino calling for nutrition labels, saying we should talk about the staleness and the ingredients in there, because there's a difference between going on KBB, drilling down, yeah, that's an auto intender, versus someone reads an article in the Tribune about a seatbelt, you know, seatbelt recall, and oh, that's auto intender. Kind of different value there, right? If you're GM. So the third party aggregate, you know, for lookalike modeling and all that, that helps scale and get sexy. Oh, I can get 7 million auto intenders. Well, there aren't 7 million auto intenders. So, you know, fortunately, we're pendulum back to first and second. This is from our friend Eric. Smart guy. He's part of, he's an investor because he's part of MediaMath's. He founded MediaMath's venture arm, MathCap, and relevant quote from a long time ago. Here we go.
So another sort of, you know, macro view, now that we've been at the micro view, is if you think about this in big chunks, in eras, the early days were media-driven, ads were pretty much bought the way that they've always been bought, you know, salespeople over lunch. The last 10 years has been spent trying to build an anonymous identity set and segmentation set and method, uniform method of talking about auto intenders and different trigger marketing events, but doing that like one screen at a time. And what Eric identified is this has to be known across the media spectrum. That's, you know, and that's what we think the next, this is not going to be over like next year. It's gonna be 10 years to maybe even longer before you have some kind of solid state way that we're all comfortable being identified and, you know, segmented and measured.
You can also have a progression where media channels, obviously this is for mostly paid media here, but media channels were buying for decades on demographic, third-party data, and contextual relevance. I want to be in this. I want to be in that football game, and I know it's men 25 to 54. DMP's pendulum swung to programmatic, and folks forgot about contextual placement a little bit and said, I just want to find this user 01243. Probabilistically or deterministically, I don't care where they are. I'll, you know, block off porn and other bad sites. I don't want to be in there, but otherwise I don't care. CDP is the blending of that, the chocolate, the peanut butter, realizing that we should be able to do both. Because again, we are in certain environments where a brand association makes sense. And oh, by the way, you should know my whole history when I'm seeing that message. That's the 1.1 is 11.
So a little more detailed view of the sort of almost planetary collision of known marketing world, CRM, whether it's offline, mail, and anonymous is to look at it through the marketing funnel. So we think that the wider world of building awareness and brand recognition is representative of the future you, right? The DMP and the digital world up to this point has been mostly about what we think of as the current you. And these are two completely different business cases. So, the internet knows that I'm looking for a car because of my browsing history and my cookie signature. But it doesn't know what car I'm going to buy in 4 years. It might be able to tell a WISP that I'm going to look for hybrid or totally electric. It might know. And the real challenge is for brands and even media and the technology companies is the middle. This is where the bifurcation happens, and this is where the identity breakage is. This is where segments are not the same. This is where measurement's not the same. And that's why you still, Adobe, Newstar, media, the people that have blended media mix modeling, multi-touch attribution, and identity, this is where we're breaking new ground. The business cases here, we talk about this as link, the word link, integrate, which is, there's a lot of effort that will go in there, and we'll talk about it more.
One example, won't name them, but a really large other financial client, we helped their credit card division not too long ago, like 2 years ago, and still separate teams and budgets for brand awareness in DR. Totally different data sets, fighting for dollars between themselves, insanity. Using managed service, 60% margin, outsourced DSP, not using their agency well, not using their data silos well. And so the CDP is ultimately able to, again, bring these worlds together and recognize that there's a bit of a journey sometimes. Maybe not when you're buying flowers for your mom on the Friday before Mother's Day, but you're buying a car, a house, insurance, thinking of making massive changes with your phone or your toothpaste. These are not impulse moves, right? And so how do you maintain that consistency through the consideration set?
Right. And we've also talked to a lot of clients about inverting this funnel, meaning if there's one thing you should have as a master case for your CDP, the customers, like I was talking about the specialty retail example before of 80% of your gross margin dollars coming from 10% of the consumers that you encounter or prospect or show ads to. You want to find out who those people are. You want to attribute the crap out of them, know as much about them in as much detail as possible, and then you want to machine learn, project, lookalike model that up into the funnel. That's the CDP. That's really the case with CDP. And this is being done in small parts now, but that's along with things like people would call it journey mapping, but I think especially if you're a direct response brand, this is the way you should be thinking about it. If you're launching a new GM's going to launch Hummer as an electric vehicle, I'm not sure that's a little bit different assignment. But, and just zooming in on it a little bit, who's familiar with the concept of in the list business, the mailing list, and the difference between a data source, Experian can't answer this, and a compiler. So the source is somebody who gets the raw data, like the census is the basis for segmentation. In the 60s, people just came up with, hey, the government has broken down neighborhoods into zip codes, and I have so many household addresses in a zip code. And then they went to mail carrier route, which is sort of the zip +4 and zip +5 and 6. So the people that source that data is more raw data. Experian, Equifax, and the big marketing services companies, they compile that data into segments. So segments are made up of many attributes and sources that come from other places, and they might put some secret sauce in there. Like the Prism models, what's the house segment business called? I forget. But there are segmentation that are built on attributes that are like 30 years old. This is the way, Nielsen is made up of this, and this is the way TV has been bought forever. So the know-how of 40 years focused on lists, compiling, refining, is sort of the offline world. And I don't know if the digital people, we gave complete respect to that. Like, we came up with DMP, which is essentially lists of cookies, right, that are broken down into segments. And we never use the word compile, but we are compiling new segments from first and that data and whatnot. And at the same time, the offline people were both intimidated and I think didn't really give enough respect to the digital people. So we almost look at these, that old book, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. It's almost two different total thought patterns, which is, culturally why the two worlds haven't come together, or the full funnel marketing or journey mapping hasn't been possible till now. But this is the job of the CDP. It's really smashing these two worlds together forcibly if necessary, organizationally, technologically, from a data integration standpoint, and it's not going to be easy. So we talked about one way that the marketers, the CDPs are different is, some are coming from the CRM side and some are coming from the digital side, but there's other ways that they're different.
Yeah, and we think we're going to see, Adobe's unique, and again, we, full transparency, we normally have a sell-side CDP or SSP sponsor for our training, and then we have a buy-side sponsor. And we want to show, the difference and all that, and hey, these companies are focusing on the side. These guys actually have smartly developed tools and use cases for each. And so the neat part is that the same way that there are a few companies that have a pretty good buy and sell side stack like Google, and there are folks that, again, think of publishers as brands smartly. These same tools are going to be used by each side of the transaction, if you will, at least paid media, which is going to be wonderful because we've spent, so Scott back there, and Ward have led teams where we call on Horizon and brands and buyers selling PMPs, private marketplace deals, or PG, programmatic guarantee deals sometimes. And as Jen Cole will attest on the front line here on our team who just came in, the pain of not knowing about the data matching between the advertiser and the publisher, when there should be one set of data being passed through the DSP/DMP to the SSP/DMP. And that mess and lack of communication is awful and just wastes thousands of hours and millions of dollars because they aren't aligned. And one integrated CDP should take care of that. One integrated DMP would have taken care of that, but they never got together. So hopefully this is 2.0 and an opportunity to bring the marketer and publisher a little smarter together about first-party data so that you could actually have that kind of transaction in a second-party world to make campaigns sync a lot better. That's the promise. The reality is a lot of work, but we're getting there. Last couple slides here. So obviously, as we mentioned, there's some regulatory efforts here in place. We're how many days into CCP? It is 16 days. And the world hasn't fallen. We went through this with GDPR, if some of you remember, in May of 2018. It felt a little like Y2K in terms of everyone kind of freaking out, and then we woke up and okay, no one went to jail yet, and all right, we're all still here, and okay, good. But obviously, we then saw subsequent dings in France and elsewhere, and we will see dings in the States this year for sure, in California and maybe at the federal level by the end of the year, who knows. But fortunately, there are more people on offense and proactive than like we saw a year and a half ago. For what it's worth, again, there are more reasons to be optimistic about this and we see it at a macro level being a speed bump on the way to eventually getting fully deterministic and fully opt-in on every media channel. But understandably, there's going to be consumer fear because people have abused the privilege and rights that we have with the technology and not done a great job with it, whether you're Facebook in Cambridge or whether you're a very, very small company working with very, very small DSP and just not doing retargeting very well and not suppressing and serving the wrong ads and belly-fed ads showing up with top-tier publishers and all that little stuff, and consumers understandably saying, I haven't really been told what's going on here. I just want to get a little control. And usually lack of information equals fear and mistrust, and then it leads to things like this. So for what it's worth, the goal, and it's going to be a little quirky, and we'll laugh if this plays in a couple of years, but we think the real CCPA, optimistically, is going to be the fact that you get choice, convenience, personalization, and advocacy. And that'll be the new CCPA, hopefully by the end of the year. Smile and wink. And, we were thinking of putting a little cheesy musical number around that as well. But hopefully that's a little bit of a bright spot on something that understandably is an appropriate wake-up call for all of us in the industry. Yes, Ward.
Who are the respondents on that survey?
What's that?
Who are the respondents on that survey? That's pretty clear to me.
Yeah, so it was a couple months ago. Our friends at Osterman did it, and it was at their company. So U.S. security professionals. So that's a broad term because Osterman, is not Forrester or folks. So yeah, it's a hybrid of people. So that's going to be a legal person down the hall. It's going to be a finance person down the hall. It's going to be, oh yeah, we're good. It's anecdotal and self-reported, not audited like we and others do to kind of see if you're really in check. And again, we know, you talk about CDPs being wet cement. You guys know this is pretty wet cement in terms of, what the actual definitions are and what you can and can't do and what happens when you leave California, like a lot of us do, right? So free opportunity during the break. We'll tell you the story of how CCPA got created because of one person getting drunk at a cocktail party in California. If you care later. Okay.
Right. If you had, a lot of our research is a little bit biased, you could argue. If you had asked this is sort of from the fear side, if you will. So, are you compliant? Oh, not yet. We don't, we're settling down. If you had asked this, like, if there's a chance that you could lose your company and go to jail, are you compliant? Oh, 100%. So it's a lot of how you ask the question. It's another work in research. So this, just to sort of recap where we are, these planetary forces are colliding. The offline world, the known data world, the database marketing world, and the digital anonymous programmatic RTB world. And it's been happening. They've been bouncing off each other for 10 years, but now it's happening under this umbrella of CDP. Prohaska feels that Taylor is going to win over Target, that delighting consumers and the internet becoming a better place long-term is going to win out over, I'm going to lock down my data and I want to pay for the internet, or whatever fear pitch somebody from that side would use. And to get into the nitty-gritty of identity, when you think about what people are calling an ID graph or an identity graph, is people familiar with that term? The graph is a simple concept, but scaling it up to an enterprise or to a company like Google is one of these things that you really sort of marvel at, because we've talked about all data being addressable, and this is how all data is addressable. Obviously, personal information, the website knows who I am because I auto log in and I've opted in and I gave it my information. I told them where I live. Email, same thing. Obviously, mail, the same thing. The call center. These are all sort of, the anchor is some kind of record, my email address, my phone number, my name, address. And so those handles are what makes up that part of the graph. These are the anchor of identity. This is how all other data can be joined to me, and sort of, you think of a little like a solar system. This is the sun. And then on the non-PII side, it's the encryption of this, otherwise the hash, that becomes sort of the translator, the pseudonym of who I am in the non-PII world. And that can be joined to a cookie, a mobile identifier, a mobile ad ID, in any one of those media channels. But the tough stuff that we talked about is, TV, out of home, whether it's in a store or outdoor advertising, even terrestrial radio. This is, we talked about the legacy of the census blocks, the discrete marketing area, and the way TV is bought, sort of the geo around the city or an urban area. zip code plus whatever, the lat long point of interest database, the IP address, the customer fingerprint of the machine, the 80 things on your phone that can be sort of mined and seem to be you, no matter where you show up. And the store customer ID, which is anonymous but heavily linked to who you are. So if you're a retailer or a brand or a direct-to-consumer company, we feel that this is first party, that this will be yours, the linkage of your list of who people are to how they're linked to all these other handles must be yours and yours alone. The question that we need to answer as an industry is, how does that graph interact from a database integration and almost like a dictionary or a lexicon? How does it interact with the rest of the world? And that's where we got to hammer out agreements and you know, whether it's a co-op or a consortium or and who's going to drive that. I think what we've seen is that the world, whether it's the government, the consumer base, or you know, brands and publishers at large, they just are not going to trust a commercial company owning that key, the central key of anonymous to known, and the thing that can sort of know who we are no matter where we are. So that's what we're wrestling with.
And to tease something out, you'll be hearing from the IAB during their annual leadership meeting in 25 days, where they are looking, and we're privileged to be helping them with this, to drive that unification in an appropriate way globally, so that everyone can do this in a consumer-first, privacy-first way, and help support the open web, help support, again, just better personalization. Other exciting potential announcements after that, but you know, fortunately, there's a train moving on this pretty quickly and appropriately. So exciting stuff.
And again, the three themes are the identity graph joined to audience segmentation and some type of measurement, attribution, and decisioning about what to do with that information. And just real quick, looking at this almost like a layer cake. So here's your first party system if you built a graph. So that's, you know, who we all are at Nordstrom, or Saks, I should say. Here's who we are in terms of the scoring or success of how important am I, and we are to each other with that. I am to the brand and it is to me. And then this is the big trick that not many companies have done, which is listening to the internet at scale for that score, that signal. And that's where all that technology and the database, the distributed cloud database and the stuff that Yahoo pioneered, that with Google, the Hadoop, the Apache Spark project, because these log files, even if you've ever seen the web log come out of your web servers, if you're a mature site, those can be, you know, petabytes per day. I think the daily log from like an AppNexus or a MediaMath, which we have seen people store in memory and mine for who their customers are and how they're scoring. Maybe it's not real time and it's not across the media spectrum and they can't make a decision and push it to another channel. These can be 50 to 75 petabytes per day, which is
a lot if you aren't wonky. Yes, hold on.
So yeah, having all this in one logical environment, not physical environment because of the cloud technology, that's sort of how you need to think about evolving the data layer cake. I think we're going to get into a lot of,
yeah,
you know, we're a little bit over
time. This is a setup
time.
to the use cases and some of the hands in the soil a little bit later, but it's improving your UX. We'll show you an example when I was at the New York Times and how we tried to start that 7 years ago.
Right, we talked about suppression.
Yeah, we had launched our programmatic creative practice, helping folks there 4.5 years ago quietly, and then we mothballed it 3 months later because nobody knew what the hell that meant, and media and creative weren't together. So we relaunched it at CAM last year and called it data-driven storytelling. Sub-bullet, it's called programmatic creative, and oh, okay, I can kind of get that a little bit now. You know, instead of just serving the same creative of the car driving around the mountain in California. California, but you should probably talk to me differently if you know I already own that car, or if I own your competitor's car, or if I don't own that car at all, but, you're seeing a signal that, we're pregnant, and so we might be looking to move from the stereotypical sports car to the minivan in 18 months, whatever. So knowing that ahead of time, maybe the 30 is addressed differently during the college football plan.
Right, trigger marketing, we're pregnant, we're moving, are two of the biggest marketing events. People spend 10x in the following 18 months or for a couple of years that they spend. There's an entire statistical marketing world around just triggers from a CDP standpoint. And we see the verticalization of CDPs being very important. And again, the first party nature. So just the business cases that we're talking about, we think that they're in some kind of a risk order and a return, risk and return. So most companies, and we're talking brands here, but also publishers, have linked email and their CRM systems to their website. Right, this is Criteo, this is retargeting, this is the stalker ad that everybody joked, cocktail party joked about. That same technique into a programmatic world, possibly with dynamic creative, is the next step. Doing that across all screens, all environments, is the next thing. And I'd say that the industry is sort of like the ability to do this technologically is sort of here. The inclusion of walled garden media, social media, and that data is becoming, it's harder and harder to find because those companies are, for various reasons, being more stingy with it, is the next step. And perhaps, I'd love to hear Google's, one of the hardest things to do is to integrate search data, both from an efficacy and ethics standpoint. Like, nobody wants, that you search something to show up in your cookie or your anonymous data history. And then the top.
Some do.
Well, yeah.
And all maybe want some. That's the challenge.
Right.
Is that, it's not a 0 and 1. I guess that's part of the debate, right?
Yeah. And we have an opinion on this, but we'll talk about it in the future stuff. And then the geotagging and the inclusion of terrestrial marketing, linear marketing, out of home, and all that is sort of the next business case. So these are the sort of steps that Prohaska was like, we're like, hey, where are you on the spectrum of data integration and media and segmentation and attribution, otherwise known as the CDP, across all of these environments? And the stereo sort of almost sonar or radar-like metaphor that we use for CDPs is there is some kind of data process happening. This is, let's just say that this is segmentation. This is hundreds of sources of data coming together into a very large data lake, the log file from the DSP, the web log, properly smashed together with your first party data, your identity stuff is here. And and this has been running. This is sort of the DMV. It's running, it's optimizing, your segments are getting sharper and sharper. But in a real-time manner, having this go over to a media environment and changing the decision of that on a somewhat, it's from a cost effectiveness standpoint, real-time is in quotes. It needs to be real-time. I was just here from a geo standpoint at Starbucks, and now I'm in Dunkin' Donuts, and they want to conquest me. That's pretty sophisticated. And this process of, it's almost an infinity loop of measurement in the media world and absorbing that data and re-upping my segments. Right now, this happens who would say this happens on a monthly basis from a media efficiency standpoint? And happening on a 10-minute basis, which is where things are headed, is sort of where we're heading. So, and we've got a couple of versions of this later, the infinity loop approach.
So we're kind of at the home stretch of the foundation building here. So, again, think of data flow, you can tell a lot, and thinking about what are the inputs and then what are the outputs and how do you execute. So another quick little summary here of all the different places that you can gather from, and then what your CDP then can kick out, again, in paid, earned, and owned, and across the marketing end, and ultimately other departments. So takeaways off of this, obviously, making sure we're privacy central in a CCPA, and then making that our own cheesy CCPA, very nice, optimistic acronym. So it's glass half full. There are so many times we hear clients on the brand side saying, we just want to be more like Amazon. Okay, that's a little bit of work. And your budget's what again? Okay, great. No, let's at least get some discipline around some of the things that they do pretty well.
It's aspirational.
Yeah, exactly. It's a nice North Star for sure. And this is from major big box folks who won't get there in 3 years, even close. But at least it's nice that they're realizing that, gee, maybe they should be thinking about themselves as both a publisher and a retailer in store and on the internet. Because retail stores like that, bringing together the digital and physical worlds, and again, realizing that we're one person with one identity in both spaces. And then, as Paul mentioned again, kind of going more to a bottom of the top method, right?
Yes. Yeah, cloning your success. I mean, if your EBITDA or net profit is driven by those customers, you've got these giant, scary monster questions like multicultural marketing. Most of our marketing is still from a cultural standpoint like it was 20 years ago. And as America becomes more diverse, we're not addressing that, I think. And that scares banks and credit card companies and auto companies. And then there's the millennial question. Anybody with kids or tweens or whatever, they're just not consuming media. My 10-year-old is just meme. He's just a meme machine. I mean, it's just, I don't know how you can sit there and watch memes all day, but this is what
the kids today.
Yeah. So it's those things that are gonna change the way data works and all this stuff. Go ahead.
So we're at a critical moment here. This is where we potentially lose you physically, not just maybe mentally. This is always the first risk when we're doing our first ever live training. One of the other things that when we plan all this out, the first version of that section used to be 87 slides, just so you know. We hacked that down by 2/3. I know. So you can tell we get a little passionate, a little wonky about this. And so that was maybe foundation, and then maybe going in the weeds and bringing it back out a little bit, taking some risks and seeing if you could stay with us. So we always say when we plan these, because we've done these 6-7 years now, that there's a learning curve of when people come in, no matter what we title the session. You get a spectrum of folks that show up. And we know that a number of you, maybe all of you, at one point, or a lot of points, were like, holy shit, slow down. What the hell was that? And that's a little crazy. When others are looking at some of those slides and maybe eye rolling and going, all right, yeah, no, let's move on, let's get to it. So we know that's 10-20% of each end of the curve. And our goal is to find at least, get into that 60 to 70% meat while still having some stuff that caters to the folks that need the 001, not the 101, and some folks who are already at 401 and just heard CDP University, and it's the first time anyone's ever done this. And they're like, all right, I'll go and see let's see what they got. So we recognize that, and we hope that you're going to stay with us for the rest of the way. If you have to go for other client or other reasons, again, we're emailing the deck, we're recording this on live stream. We're going to take a 30-minute break. We are wonderfully a little bit over time that we will make up in the next 2 sections. So let's come back at 11:10 Eastern, please. And we'll see you right here. Cool. Thanks.